Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees, and welcome to part 2 on the incredible story of the greatest Italian player to ever step foot on a football pitch, Giuseppe Meazza, the man who is the name of the most famous stadium in Italy, the man who lifted not 1 but 2 World Cup trophies, the man who inspired millions and is still inspiring millions. In the first episode, we went to Milan and met the skinny boy named Giuseppe Meazza. He grew up on the tough streets, kicking a rag ball between the cobbles. He was dreaming big. He lost his father in the war. He helped his mum on a fruit and veg store. He was told he was too small, too weak. He refused to stop. He went from a hunger strike to a pair of football boots, from rejection at AC Milan to being spotted and joining Inter Milan. And that is where the story continues. In the dressing room on his very first day in the senior team, one of the senior players looked at him and laughed. He said, "Who is this young, slight teenager?" In fact, he used a word for him, which was balia, a word used at the time for young boys, not in a complimentary way. Not even close. You can almost imagine it, can't you? The doubt, the smirk, the "he can't compete with us." But Giuseppe Meazza didn't say a word. He let his football do the talking. Because on September 12, 1927, he stepped onto a pitch for his debut. And boom, 2 goals, Inter won 6-2. Giuseppe Meazza was responsible for 2 of them. Just like that, the noise was gone. The next day, the famous Italian newspaper, La Gazzetta, wrote about him, calling his play intelligent, fresh, quick, and loads of other positive things. And that nickname, which he was originally given by one of the senior players who stuck his nose at him, Balia, well, that was said to have stuck, but stuck in a positive way. Because he was a kid, but he was a kid that was mesmerising. He was a kid that was magical. But it didn't stop there, because Giuseppe got a bit ridiculous. The goals started flying in. Not 1, not 2, but handfuls of them. In one season, he scored 33 goals in 29 games, and some of those matches, they were quite ridiculous. 5 goals in one match, then another 5 followed, then he scored 6 in one match. It was like a game of FIFA against somebody who hadn't had a game of FIFA before, but this was just what he was like. He would glide past defenders. They felt like they were stuck in the mud. Then he would get to the goalkeeper, slow it down and almost tease the keeper. Feint, flick, switch, change angle, and then put the ball calmly into the back of the net. And then, when you think it can't get any bigger, it does. Because in 1929, a brand new league was born. A league called Serie A. That is the Italian top division. It's the division as we know it today. And right there at the heart of it was a 19-year-old Giuseppe Meazza, now playing for a team who went by the name of Ambrosi Anna Inter, which was what Inter Milan were called back in the day. Giuseppe was quite literally running the Italian top division. 31 goals in 33 games. Let that sink in for a minute. And the bath. Nearly a goal a game. In the toughest league in the country, with the highest of opposition. He held a record for a debut season which stood for generations. And if that wasn't enough, by the age of 20, he was made the captain, leading men nearly twice his age. Imagine the dressing room. You got this 20-year-old Meazza and players in their 30, nodding, being focused and listening with interest. Giuseppe Meazza just kept creating moments which could never be forgotten. In a huge match against Genoa, the title was on the line. But things went wrong. Badly wrong. Inter Milan were 3-0 down, and the dream was slipping away. They needed at least a draw, but Giuseppe Meazza didn't panic. Second half, he stepped up, he stepped forward, 1 goal, then another. Yep, you guessed it, he scored a hat-trick. From 3-0 down to 3-0. He saved the day and the Inter fans have never forgotten it. And a few months later, against AS Roma, in their very first meeting in Milan, he did something almost unbelievable. 3 goals, a hat-trick. However, it was in the first 3 minutes. Before some fans had even sat down with their penne pasta and found their seats, he'd already scored a hat-trick. And Inter went on to win the game 6-0. And Giuseppe Meazza was once again at the heart of all of it. On the 9th of February 1930 in Rome, Giuseppe Meazza made his debut for the Azzurri, which is the nickname for the national team in Italy. It started badly. Italy were 2-0 down, but just before half-time, he banged in one goal. Then he banged in another one a couple of minutes later. And Italy went on to win the game 4-2. The coach then moved him into a deeper role, not just scoring goals, but creating them, seeing passes others couldn't even imagine. He was a player who could do it all. And in the 1934 World Cup, right there in Italia, he ran the show. Goals, assists and big moments, they all seemed to have his name linked to them. Even in the final, carrying an injury, he helped create the winning goal as Italy lifted the trophy. And just like that, the boy from the cobbled streets in Milan was one of the best players on the planet. Now, this is where the story gets a little wild, because by the mid-1930s, Giuseppe Meazza wasn't just a footballer anymore. He was a proper household name, a genuine celebrity, one of the first Italy had ever seen. There were fast cars, smart clothes, nights out in Milan, and everything else you could possibly imagine. Sometimes that lifestyle raises a few eyebrows. There are well-known stories from that time that he didn't always stick to the usual routines. On one occasion, before a big derby match, he was late, like very late. When they finally got hold of him, because remember back in those days there was no such thing as an iPhone, he'd been resting at home. No big warm-up, no perfect preparation, just Giuseppe doing his thing. So they rushed him to the stadium. And what did he do? He scored 2 goals. Of course he did. Because that, by that point, was what Meazza was all about. A bit chaotic, a bit cheeky, but when it came to football, he was ice cold. He was a finisher. He was brilliant. And now we reach the very top of the Meazza Mountain. The 1938 World Cup in France, and Giuseppe Meazza is now captain of the Italian national team. The pressure was massive. The crowd was hostile. But Giuseppe led with calmness and class. He was setting up goals, guiding younger players, and leading from the front. And then one of the strangest moments in football history, a penalty against Brazil. Giuseppe steps up, but suddenly his shorts started to fall down. The elastic had gone in them. Proper nightmare stuff. So what did he do? Well, he didn't take the penalty in just his undercrackers. He held up his shorts with one hand, ran up and scored. I mean, of course he did. In that World Cup, Italia went on to win yet again. They were back-to-back world champions, and Giuseppe Meazza was a star holding onto his shorts. But just after reaching the very top, came a moment that changed everything. In 1939, after years of tough tackles and heavy knocks, Meazza began to feel something wrong in his leg. There was pain, like proper pain. There was numbness, and it was later diagnosed as a serious condition, so severe that there were fears that he may not play again. And just like that, the magic started to slow. He'd spend long stretches out of the game, barely playing, while his team carried on without him. And for a player who was so used to being magical on the football pitch, sitting on the sidelines in pain was not a place to be. After 14 years, Inter Milan made a shocking decision to let him go. And not only did they let him go, they sold him to their rivals, AC Milan. From hero to heartbreak. And now, a new, much tougher chapter was beginning. Imagine this, it's 1941. And Giuseppe Meazza is wearing the shirt of not Inter Milan, but AC Milan, about to face Inter Milan, the club that he'd played for 14 years. Before the match, he's in the dressing room, and it's said he was in tears, torn between heart and duty. But when he stepped onto the football pitch, he had a job to do. And, of course, he scored. The game ended 2-2. And even though he wasn't the unstoppable force that he once was, he still found the net. He still showed flashes of the old magic, but the world around him was changing. Away from the football pitch, World War II began disrupting everything. Seasons were broken up, football became uncertain. He moved clubs to Juventus, but things were different. However, there was another twist and a turn to come. Just when it felt like the story might be fading away, it came full circle. In 1946, Inter Milan are in serious trouble, right at the bottom of the table, staring at something unthinkable: relegation. One of the top teams in Italy, champions, goal scorers, legendary players, could potentially be going out of Serie A. So, who do they call? You guessed it, their old hero, Giuseppe Meazza. No bitterness, no hesitation, he came back, as a player and as a coach. And even now, even after everything his body's been through, he still delivered. 17 appearances and the final 2 goals of his career, helping Inter stay up and avoid relegation, saving the club which he loved, saving the club which he'd been with from the very start. It was the perfect ending. A boy with a rag ball to a legend who gave everything, right to the very last kick. And so, the Giuseppe Meazza story comes to a close. After hanging up his boots, he stayed close to the game which he loved, coaching, guiding, even travelling to manage Italy in the Olympics. But his greatest gift was helping shape the next generation back at Inter Milan, passing on everything he'd learned along the way. And in 1979, he passed away, quietly, humbly, just days before his birthday. But if you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, you'll know that legends don't fade. Because in 1980, the great stadium San Siro, home to both Inter Milan and AC Milan, was renamed in his honour. The Stadio Giuseppe Meazza, a place where his story still echoes. From a rag ball on a cobbled street to a name that will live on forever. That's not just football, that's magic. Meazza magic. What a story, what a journey. But that is what football is all about. So remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about the Football for Kids podcast. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.